Welcome to the Common Flock, and it's the 2 year anniversary special, I guess. And welcome, Lindy Endzone, former co-host of the Common Flock. Thanks for coming back for one episode.
Yeah, I remember this was a Discord idea through through our times and talking to all the good people in the Philly Sports Network Discord and starting from there and then just coming up with the idea. And well, at least it hit for one of us that we were, I was at least one of us was able to continue the podcast. And you're already up to like 3 or 4 different ones now. So yeah, kudos to you keeping all 4 of them going.
Thanks, and it's been difficult to try to balance everything out and behind the scenes, but trying the best I can. And I'm glad it was a precursor to you creating your channel because you've got a great football mind, and I'm just glad to see how you're doing after the podcast and how you've taken off yourself.
Yeah, it took a little bit. It doesn't feel to this point now that it's been over a year, if I'm being honest, because the beginning was very slow, but just through continued self confidence, determination, and just continuing to get used to the just the universe of YouTube and being a content creator. And you know now it's almost second nature. Am I in a spot where I really want to be? No, but I just have to. I gotta keep on the grind. I got a lot of work to do to catch up to everybody else.
Yeah, and that's YouTube. It's always a grind. You're always got to keep your head up and keep moving. And sometimes it's just great even to take yourself out of the daily grind just for an hour even.
Yeah,
It's
everybody needs that break. Yeah.
yeah, it's always great just to get together with people that share the same interest in some sports and sports teams, and to just kind of take your mind off some of the little things.
No, definitely.
All right, so do we want to get into some NFL talk?
Well, with the way the playoffs have been going, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Well, it hurts the Eagles fan base a little bit just watching Joe Burrow go on the run that he is, and that's crazy. Another, we just seen in our own organization of a once a second year quarterback. And yeah, while he didn't finish his second year, uh, put us in a prime position to um, get to the Super Bowl. And we watched our backup take care of business, finish it off. But that year one to year two transition, and I think I do have to say I think Joe Burrows was a lot more impressive. Num whether it's numbers, and especially coming back from the injury that he did, because it wasn't great. It wasn't great to watch for him. It wasn't great to watch for football. But talk about a bounce back, and what he just did, what he just did for the fan base and the franchise of Cincinnati. For them to now be for them to now be in the Super Bowl, that's an awesome feat. That's definitely an awesome feat for you to be the AFC champions. And now, well, the job's not done, and now the next step awaits. And finding out who their opponent is between the Rams and 49ers.
Yeah, and there's a reason Burrow was the number one pick, even with the skepticism coming out of college, and he's taken off really with guys like Jamar Chase, his former college teammate. CJ Uzoma's really come into his own recently. Joe Mixon's being Joe Mixon. They've managed well with the loss of AJ Green. They've
Mm-hmm.
done a lot of things right to get him there too, and put guys around him on both sides of the ball, and it shows because they're in the Super Bowl, and you can't ask for anything else if you're Joe Burrow.
No, and all the talk about how in the previous draft that they should have went offensive lineman because he wasn't, and that's part of what led, that's part of what led to this injury. I mean, there was holes left and right on that offensive line. They could not protect him very well, and there was a lot of people that criticized the pick of Jamar Chase over an offensive lineman. But when you've had such a strong and stable connection since college, or the amount of time that the two of them had together at LSU, and now to make it work on the NFL and be on two of the biggest stages between the collegiate level and the NFL level, um, it should feel second nature to them. But this moment's going to be a lot bigger than anything they have gone through in college. So we'll see what Cincinnati's made of.
Yeah, and I mean Jamar went through the thing of it was adjustment from college balls to NFL, and then there was starting slow, but he really came into his own recently, and that showed in his production, especially the last couple games he went off in the regular season. So it's good to see that connection finally kind of connected fully for the first time in the NFL. But you're right, this is going to be one of the biggest stages they've ever been on, and we'll see if they fold under pressure or not.
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen, and of course, depending on the result of San Fran versus the Rams, and just I guess let's just hope that they do a good enough job of scouting their opponent and knowing how to attack their defense, knowing how to apply pressure on whoever the quarterback's going to be. Um, I don't particularly know what would be the better matchup for the Bengals. Um, like it's I haven't paid very much attention to Cincinnati. Obviously, being that gotta follow my birds as much as I do. But what I do know is that um, in that AFC Championship game, that just concluded not too long ago, that Bengals defense was pretty legit. I mean, they were, they they forced, there was another overtime forced, and that's it's not the grandest fashion at all after we just witnessed Kansas City go through another overtime against Buffalo. Um, but Cincinnati held up better than Buffalo did on both sides of the ball. Didn't back down. They weren't afraid of that Chiefs offense, and they hunkered down. They got some critical stops when they needed it. Mahomes was sacked every now and then, so um, I don't know. I would have to imagine that the defensive front for the Bengals would give both quarterbacks fits, whether it's Stafford or Garoppolo. But you already know that San Fran's going to want to get the ball out of Garoppolo's hands as fast as possible. Um, so maybe if they have an advantage on the Rams' offensive line, as opposed to maybe a faster pace that San Fran might run, you never know. Cincinnati may have a better chance against the Rams, but it's all going to depend on how they can contain Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, and I'm just talking about that defensive front. They got good linebackers, good secondary. Um, I don't know much. I don't know much about Cincinnati's defense other than that. Other than the defensive front, I think they have. I think they got solid players all around. Not too many big names other than maybe who is it, Bates at safety.
Yeah.
Um, but still, I mean the Eagles showed you not too long ago that you didn't need star-studded players on both sides of the football, and while you can say offensively that the two big ones for Cincinnati being Chase and Burrow, they still got T. Higgins and Mixon's a good running back, but they're not. They don't. They're not jump off of your screen names unless you want to put James and Chase and Burrow in that category. But it's I still get a little reminisce of the Eagles run to the Super Bowl in this Bengals team. They're young, they're hungry, and they're trying to they're trying to satisfy that hunger that Cincinnati hasn't been able to in a long time.
Yeah, and they definitely do carry some similarities to that 17 Eagles team. And when it comes down to who they play, it's going to be tough either way, but I think they'd be a little bit better off facing the Niners just because that offense for LA fires on all cylinders. Cam Akers is back. Sony Michel's been great as a backup. Darrell Henderson showed he can definitely perform. He's probably going to do some big things if he moves teams. Cooper Kupp's been unstoppable. He's having a record year. And I can't say enough good things about Cooper Kupp. And then you've also got guys like Van Jefferson and, I'm losing his name, their tight end.
Tyler Higbee.
Yup, Higbee. Higbee has been kind of under the radar, but he's been playing very solid. He's been catching a lot of balls, and someone who really hasn't been used but has had a good effect on that team is probably Ben Skoranek, who's really been in the background, but will do a little here and there that isn't really noticed, but definitely helps that team. But at the end of the day, that defense is great. The Niners defense is great. It's just going to come down to who does Cincy match up with better, and I can't really tell which defense would be a tougher opponent.
No, I can't really tell either, to be honest. But at the same time, when I look at it, I mean that both of these both of these teams in the NFC that are facing are, they're full of veteran leadership. They're well built. Um, I think I would trust Stafford more than Garoppolo if I'm being honest there. As we know with the offense that San Fran likes to run, they don't want to keep the ball in Garoppolo's hands as um, on a shorter time span. They don't want to keep it in his hands longer than they have to. Get it to your playmakers and Debo Samuel and George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and that the dynamic that they all possess. Just let them do all the work, so to speak. But Stafford has been there and done that a little bit, even though he hasn't had much playoff success and the years of benefiting from Megatron in Detroit, and those teams weren't necessarily all that. I don't know if they were built good enough to be consistent to make it to the playoffs. I mean, he's had some struggles with defenses before, but yeah, I mean that's the issue that the Bengals are going to have to face here, no matter who the team is coming out of the NFC result this evening. Um, you know, I think both games are going to be hard for the Bengals, and that's I mean that's the way I take it. I don't know. I don't know if one team gives them a benefit necessarily over the other.
Yeah, especially with how built those teams are with veteran leadership, that you can throw certain looks in that you wouldn't be able to throw in with a younger defense that would may confuse Joe Burrow, and you never know because these games are all about scheming just as much as the personnel on the field.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, and they're both teams. Both teams I feel have better sets of playmakers. I mean, yeah, Jamar Chase is great. T Higgins is great. Mixon, very good, but none of them have Cooper Cup. None of them have Debo Samuel. Um, you know, they don't have a George Kittle. Um, you know, they don't have a they don't have an Odell for what it's worth. So I mean, but that's also the testament that Cincinnati's making right now. Well, like I said, there's really they don't have many big names on that football team, but like we talked about our Super Bowl winning birds. That's not it's not necessarily what it's about all the time. It's more on it's more on how you can string the wins together and um, just being stable on a just being stable from a chemistry aspect, not getting not letting things get through the doors of Novacare, or not worrying about the outside noise, that sort of thing. And you have to imagine that Cincinnati has done a lot of that this year, and it just goes to show the amount of success that they have had this year.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Cincinnati, you should definitely be happy with what they've done because nobody expected this. And at the end of the day, knocking off the Chiefs isn't easy at all. So if I were a Cincy fan, I'd just be happy with where they're at, even if they do lose the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not be disappointed either. I mean, sure. I mean, sure. Like we talked about. I mean, I get it. I get it. It's been how long? It's been how long for them? But at the same time, Uh, I can't imagine the feeling of what a brighter future looks like after them waiting time and time and again, trying to find that answer at quarterback, trying to find that answer, um, at the head coaching position, and a bunch of other areas, and now, yeah, there's really nothing to complain about, no matter what the result is.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that hurt Philly was they won it early, but then it was like not only was it bad GM decisions here and there and everything, or unlucky GM decisions, I should say, and a couple of the key factors, but another key thing was they had already gotten to their goal. Yes, you can set the bar even higher, but they had already gotten the Super Bowl, and we kind of had that hangover last a couple of years, and it was like, well, now we got to try to keep our window open when it was just way too late. So I think a loss in the Super Bowl may make them come back even hungrier and load up even more and bring in some better talent around Burrow and on that defensive side enough to come back and win.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and you can already and you can already hear you can already hear people talk about that. Oh well, we thought Joe Burrow was Joe Burrow is what we thought Carson Wentz was going to be, and if only that was the case, but it doesn't matter anymore, especially with us having to support Jalen Hurts here, and my goodness, does he need it with the you know with the way this fan base has been lately?
Yeah, I mean, this fan base has been off the wall because one side who you've got one side who's mostly like they know what they're talking about, and it's just like, how do I put this? They're not being over hype about anything. They're kind of looking at it from a realistic point of view, and it's kind of like, well, Hertz is doing. They've got the certain view on Hertz and the team, and it's from a good view. And then you've got smaller, more vocal minorities of either Hertz isn't the guy, or Hertz is the only guy, or this or that, or this or that, and that's how this fan base always is. There are always 8 different sections that say 8 different things, but at the end of the day, all we really need to do is support Hertz because this team's done great so far, especially with where we were expected to go, but there's still room to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Speaking of Carson, and obviously, hasn't been an Eagle. It could be going on 2 years now. But with this whole, between the whole Hurts situation for one, and watching what the rest of the NFC East is doing, in terms of coaching changes and everything. Um, well, the Giants picked up Brian Dable. I do got to know. I do got to know your. I especially. I do got to know your take on this because a lot of people in the Meadowlands there are you know kind of happy about it, and then there's some for whatever reason wanted Brian Flores, but I have no idea. But what is your take on the Giants hiring Dable?
I mean, I think it's definitely a step up from where they were because now you've got somebody in the door that knows a little bit about like developing players and everything because that Bills team was really young. They've developed really quick and they got really far. So he's definitely got a sight of how to develop. It depends on if he can put that into effect, but he definitely knows what kind of how to do it. And I mean, you look at where he was now. I don't remember if he was play calling. I think he was, if I remember correctly. But those offenses that he had were great offenses. And I think he's a good schemer. And when it comes down to it, I think he's going to be a good hire. But it all depends on how he can manage as a head coach because it's about taking that next step. Some coaches can do it, some can't. Some from certain trees definitely can't do it, like the Belichick tree, and then others are usually more successful, like the Andy Reid tree, which Dable kind of comes from because McDermott is from the Reid tree, and from McDermott's tree is Brian Dable. So we'll see how that goes, but I still have a little skepticism of how he can manage that kind of role, but there's definitely a lot of upside, and it all depends on who they get in the door realistically if he's going to succeed or not. Because if Daniel Jones is out and they bring in a new quarterback, I have a lot more confidence than if they keep him around.
Now, do you feel that even if they hold on to even if they do hold on to Daniel Jones, that watching what Dable was able to do for to help out Josh Allen, do you see that same case happening with Daniel Jones, or is he just not that kind of quarterback that's capable of um, taking a jump of that nature?
I don't think per se he's someone that can really make that jump, mostly because your work. Allen wasn't necessarily like Jones is. Jones came out of college from kind of a weaker school or kind of an okay school, and he gets thrown to the fire per se. He's working with a great offense at times through his career, great players, and it's not connecting. Josh Allen, his big problem was he's got a big frame, he can be mobile, he can throw the ball, but he had to work out some mechanical issues. He had to work out kind of some mental things to scrambling and kind of accuracy issues, because that was, I think, one of his bigger knocks coming out of college was his accuracy, because he could sling the ball, but he couldn't put it on point. He's kind of dialed that in now, as we've seen with some of the deep plays he's made to guys like Emmanuel Sanders and Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis this year, that he's really dialed it in. Jones isn't necessarily that type of guy. He's more prone to sitting in that pocket, and while he can move, he is mobile, not to the effect that Josh Allen is. And Josh Allen's also a guy that can take a hit and keep going. He'll actually lower his shoulder some plays where I'm like, dude, you remind me of 2017 Wentz, and it's a little scary. Jones doesn't really remind me of that mold of player. He's more of a, I can be mobile, but it's not my first option. And the thing about that is you can't teach a guy how to be, or you can teach a guy how to scramble, but you can't teach him the mindset of a scrambler. So I don't think he can really pull him to Josh Allen's level unless something really changes. Because if he couldn't do a lot with Kenny Galladay and those guys and Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley on the same offense, plus guys in the O line like Andrew Thomas, I don't think he's going to be able to go very far, even with a great coach.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't necessarily see it either. You were right with you were right on the means of Daniel Jones and everything, and yeah, it was almost Wentz-esque to a point where just depending on the look that he would go to Bale. Sometimes Jones would prematurely, sometimes he would on schedule, and yeah, it was completely dependent on the look of the defense and if he couldn't diagnose it enough and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's just Allen he's not really a prototypical quarterback compared to more Jones is a little bit closer to that. So I think that definitely helped with Josh Allen's development was the bigger build and the more scrambler like mindset of I'm going to go to run and I'm going to put my shoulder down, which most quarterbacks won't do.
Yeah, no, and they just have to figure out the fine line between when am I going to subject my body to any kind of risk, and and just make throws, and just make the throws, stay in the system, just stay in the system that way.
Yeah, and that's actually been a knock on Hurts over the year was his scrambling mentality. He's prematurely scrambled a few times and he'll go to it too quickly and not really read the field. So hopefully he can step that up there because that's something that him and younger Josh Allen shared in common was they were very premature to move at times and they wouldn't read the field fully and that would leave a lot of yards on the field.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's almost a broken record at this point talking about Hertz's issues, and we went through this even. I think it was like year two through year four with Carson, where it was just that broken record, and wanting him to improve, not seeing the improvement. We necessarily don't have the time to go through that again, but it's not to say the that this is going to be a similar situation in which that these struggles are going to persist. Um, and I don't know. Like some people feel that there was a good enough supporting cast behind Hurts. Others say that there wasn't. I think the issue was more. I think the issue was more about the defense specifically. Trying to work out the tweaks, trying to work out the growing pains, stuff like that. But um, at the end of the day, we already know that Hurts was anointed by this organization. Between the GM and the head coach. Um, so I mean, as far as 2022 is concerned, we've already been confirmed that Hurts is quote unquote the guy. But that's not to say that there won't necessarily be competition for him. Going into last season, the beginning of the year, I don't know that Joe Flacco was the best. Was the best in terms of competition because they're two completely different quarterbacks at two completely different phases in their time. Flacco ends up getting traded back to the Jets, where where we got him from in the first place, and then that undrafted rookie did not last long. We bring in Gardner Minshew, who we already know is unhappy with the situation right now. That he feels that he's still a starter in this league. So we might end up. I don't know. We might end up losing Minshew. We might end up losing Minshew as well, but I don't know how much of a benefit that would be when you already know where he is. You already know where his mentality is, and those kinds of players are going to offer a different kind of competitive edge because Minshew has the hunger of wanting to be a starter, and uh, in terms of competition, that would be a great place to start to see the the improvement of Hurts, how much better he gets in year three, and just how just how good enough the competition is going to be between him and Minshew. So does this does this mean whether or not that we're going to invest in a quarterback in the draft? I think we still will. Maybe not. Maybe not with one of the earlier picks. It might be later again, or it might very well be another undrafted rookie. Um, but I think we have better competitors in place to uh, challenge Hurts, and that's all we should ask of outside of Jalen with his with outside of Jalen himself and his intangibles. We gotta we just have to ask for an ample amount of competition to challenge Hurts and really find out where he is in terms of a quarterback.
Yeah, and you really hit the nail on the head with that. Of Minshew's going to bring a different kind of competitiveness with thinking he deserves a starting spot, and it's all you really need to ask for. I mean, they could invest really late in like a seventh round guy or UDFA, but that's really just going to be someone they can put behind the two to just go, this is our third option if we ever need him, like a Nate Sudfeld. So if it comes down to it, we may invest really late, but that they're not really going to look early. And we all know how much Jeffrey Lurie really likes Jalen Hurts, so I can almost guarantee that they're not going to look early because Lurie's going to go, nope, don't do it, or you lose your job.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm not all that worried about it, um, personally, but we do know the kind of product that Lori wants to put on the field, and I bet I bet there was times throughout last season that this isn't what he was exactly looking for. And how true that is or not, there's there's some validity behind it when you look at Hurts as a quarterback. Um, him just going through the first read and bailing. Um, the lack of staying in the system, going through your progressions. Premature exiting of the pocket, um, a lack of play recognition, timing being off with your receivers. So there, yeah, I mean, but a lot of this was still to be expected when you're considering all the above and the conditions in which how Hertz started his career in the first place. I mean, that was not ideal whatsoever. But Hertz made the best of it for what he was able to do, and well, here's to here's to the future and seeing what Hertz is going to be capable of overall. I don't know if we've necessarily watched his ceiling yet, especially for a quarterback that's only 23, going to be going on 24.
Yeah, and getting into a ceiling, part of that's just going to be putting the right guys around him. I mean, Brandon Brooks retired, so you got to find a solution there. I'm glad that he's found enough peace to call it quits, and that he's going on his terms, and that's nice. But we got to fill that gap. Rieger's still a problem, and there's just a lot of question marks to fill around Hurts too, and we'll see what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the defense is worse off than the offense is. I think the problem for the offense is that there's a lack of depth at the playmaking positions. And when you look at it, you start at you for instance, you start at the running back spot, and there's already questions on whether we should give Miles Sanders an extension or not. And then you go behind him, you're going to have a second year player in Kenny Gainwell. Got to watch on how he develops. I think Boston Scott's going into this offseason as a free agent. Um, didn't see much of Jason Huntley. So you got that combination there of, you know, what's the depth going to look like? What's the rotation even going to look like? So you may have to consider a running back at some point in the draft, or I don't know if free agency is going to have any available that are remotely good to fit this system. And then you think of Jordan Howard. Is he going to be coming back or not? I don't know about that one. Although it wouldn't hurt that it'd be another vet minimum deal, because I mean that's pretty much what he's going to earn at this point, at this stage in his career, with all things considered, between injury and other factors that have put him in the spot that he is right now. Wide receiver spot, we already know, you already touched on it about Jalen Rager and and the embarrassment that he was last year. And, sure, there was times where his quarterback didn't necessarily help him, but at the same time, when you're as inconsistent as you are, and getting in these speculated beefs with people on Twitter, and those conversations make you look like soft serve ice cream, and not be, not being able to looking like you're not being able to make it in the NFL, stuff like that. He's got a lot of work to do. And then Wes Watkins really, for a 6th-round pick, he performed pretty well. I haven't necessarily had any unsatisfaction or disappointment in Quez. Although there was times where he had maybe some miscommunication issues and what his assignment is on the field, and um, there was games where he wasn't featured enough. But all things considered, I think Quez did well enough you know for who he is as a player. Devontae Smith, don't got to talk about much with him other than just continuing to evolve as an NFL receiver. Since the NFL level is that next and last step from collegiate, and we already watched him as the best receiver in college football. So now it's about being trying to be the best receiver in the NFL. And yeah, while those are very high expectations to set on him, um, as we know, a lot of Alabama players are built that way. Um, you know, especially Hurts. Especially Hurts having a portion of his career at Bama, and you enter him, you enter Devontae, you enter Landon Dickerson, and we're getting a taste of that now, and it's good that it's good that we're actually paying attention to some Bama players in the draft. Um, and then outside of them, outside of those guys, there really isn't much to look forward to. Like we heard in the press conference, in Rager being the three receiver under Quez as the two. That was embarrassing. JJ Arcega-Whiteside being limited to just blocking assignments. That's embarrassing. Um, there really isn't much to look forward to in terms of receiver, and that's going to be a problem if they don't address that elephant in the room. The lack of playmakers that they have there. A veteran could be very beneficial at that spot, especially trying to bring some of these kids along, and showing them the ropes of what it's like to be an NFL receiver. There really isn't all that much veteran leadership in that locker room. We've said before. I mean, as much as we like Greg Ward, he's just not that guy either. Um, so we'll see in terms of that. And the tight end spots pretty much has the same problem. Outside of Dallas Goedert, who do you really like right now? Jack Stoll had a considerably good year for what it was, with him as an undrafted rookie out of Nebraska. Um, Tyree Jackson can't stay on the field. He's already had two. Two considerable injuries. They just brought back Noah Togiai on the futures contract. So, I mean, they're gonna need another number two tight end, and as bringing Richard Rodgers back is also not a solution there. for for being completely honest with it. But yeah, I mean, so you got depth issues at the receiver and tight end position. Running back is going to be a concern. So I mean, I just think that's the difference between the offense and the defense. The offense the offense has a depth problem. I'm not worried about the offensive line personally, but when you move over to the defense, they don't have enough skill players, at core positions, and it's time to stop. It's time to stop not paying attention to the linebacker position. Your edge rushers could use some help, other than the fact that you got the rookies some playing time with Milton Williams, Teron Jackson, Patrick Johnson. They all got some. They all got some playing time, to help their development, and actually have homework to look over, have some film study to look over, stuff like that. So you look at all four areas on the defense, and it could definitely use some work. And that's not necessarily the case with the offense to me. But at the same time, this more than shows that we are definitely more than a quarterback away from being consistent contenders in deep playoff runs for the NFC conference.
Yeah, and quick what's up to BPS and DLSG in the chat. Thank you guys for coming through. But yeah, the offense, it does definitely have some holes, especially with Terry Jackson, the guy they raved about, not being able to really touch the field. And I mean, Quez has really played good for what it's worth and where he was picked and where he was kind of valued at. He came out of nowhere this year. And other than that, other than him and Smith, there really hasn't been anything good in that receiving room. And hopefully that can change. Running backs, there is a depth problem. Plus, you've got injuries have hit that room um, separately here and there, a little bit to go around for everybody at times. That's been a problem. And you're right, skill positions are definitely going to need to be fixed there, but defense does have a lot of holes. I mean, Brandon Graham or Derek Barnett's got to go. Brandon Graham, he's not going to have much longer, as sad as it is to say. Same with Fletch. Javon Hargrave did very well this year. He actually got into the Pro Bowl as an alternate for, I think it was Kenny Clark. Couldn't make it, but he really cooled down in the second half of the year when the schedule got easier. And that defensive line, Josh Sweat was thrown in and out of the rotation. I mean, I kind of got worried because I was expecting a big year, and then all of a sudden there would be games where either he was put on the field and couldn't get himself going, or was gassed super bad because the offense kept putting him in a bad position, or he wasn't on the field because Ryan Kerrigan, of all people, was getting more time than he was. And Ryan Kerrigan himself struggled too. He's getting older. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any. He's starting to come to the point where you expect more regression than progression. And while we've got a couple young guys in this defensive line that look good, they're, as of right now, they're not going to fill the hole that would be left of guys that could leave this year, including Derek. Well, Derek Barnett doesn't really leave much of a hole anymore because he penalizes himself more than he actually gets sacks. But we'll see with that line, with the line. But linebackers, like you said, we need to invest in it because we haven't done so in a while, and it's time because we can't just rely on Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, and whoever else we throw in alongside him, whether it's Sean Bradley or who else. And our one guy that we brought in, Jacoby Shepard, to be a linebacker safety mix that was supposed to work well in a 4-2-5, to be that extra guy brought down in the box, didn't actually get much time, if at all, this year. Then you also had the problem of Jannard Avery would have a couple games where he did good, and then for the rest, it was like they were putting up missing posters because they couldn't find him. And Eric Wilson was a complete miss. There's a reason he was cut mid-season, and the rest just wasn't there. So you're right. We really do need to invest in this draft or free agency, and hopefully we do it heavily. And then safety is a big question mark. Rodney and Anthony Harris both have expiring contracts this year. It's the battle of who do you bring back and who do you let walk, because you're not going to be able to pay both of them, bring them back, plus figure out the rest of what you need to figure out between your veterans and bringing more guys in. And honestly, I don't think you're going to have a need for both of them for where they both are. And then corner's a big need too because you've only really got Darius Slay. Steven Nelson did his job as a 1-year rent-a-corner. He had good games. He had really bad games where he would get burned like he was Ronald Darby all over again. I don't think he's really going to stay another year. If he does, he's going to turn into a depth piece. Avonte Max played good when he wasn't thrown on the outside because Steven Nelson wasn't actually showing up to certain games. And then you had the shuffle like we've had for years past of corners between guys like Josiah Scott, who mostly got time in the slot when Maddox wasn't there, to guys like Mac McClain was on the roster at one point. He would get in a couple of snaps a game. Um, McPherson got some snaps here and there. You really wouldn't notice he was in, but he was there. And a couple other younger guys would get some time, but really weren't prevalent. I mean, it wasn't really notable. So that whole defense could use some ads on each position, on each grouping, and we'll see. I mean, it all depends on who Philly has their eye on in the draft, and that actually pivots over to something I wanted to ask you. What do you see us doing with our first three first round picks this year?
That's gonna be that's gonna be completely depending on the on the fact of whether this front office is enticed or not in wanting to make an upgrade at the quarterback position. And that's one thing that we've been talking about here is you can hear it throughout the fan base, like how much stock are we really putting into Howie and Howie Sirianni and all these guys talking about Hurts being the guy at quarterback. And we've already seen that before where they did it to Carson. And but we already knew what was in the cards for Carson. Like, he wanted out. And even still he was anointed as the guy and whatnot. Even besides the fact of Hurts being drafted. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not getting that this time. But it does come down to how they feel where this team is. If they're a quarterback away from getting to the Super Bowl, I don't necessarily think so, in my opinion. But having compiled three first round picks does not happen all that often, especially in a class that's pretty, I would say, defense heavy. Towards the top 20. There's some very good quality linebackers, that could go in the top 20. N'Kobe Dean being one of them, and I think there's a couple others that I can't think of their name. Receiver wise, any of the Bama receivers, we already know that. Chris Olave from Ohio State. Linderbaum was talked about for the center position. If speculating the odds as to whether Kelsey takes his turn for retirement or not. So there's a lot to consider. But as we know Howie's system and how he likes to draft, they've always put a big emphasis on starting with the trenches first. So you know, depending on who's available in the top 20, it wouldn't surprise me if at least one of them was a offensive or defensive lineman, maybe an edge rusher. With the departure of Derek Barnett, so we think he cannot come back after a poor season of making only $10 million, or not only, but making $10 million on a fifth-year option just to be a dud of a first-round pick when he was taken. So you have to imagine that one of them is going to be used on an edge rusher. Um, Offensive line, I don't really think so, especially when you know that Jeff Stoutland's your offensive line coach. I mean, he can he can I was gonna say polish a turd, but that's terrible. He can really make anybody. He can make anybody into something, even if it's not in the first year. Jordan Mailata it was one of his most prized products, one of his most prized projects. But it took Mailata a while to convert from the style of rugby to the NFL, and to go from a runaway semi truck to a guy that's blocking Hertz's blind side. uh, that's only a testament to the grit and dedication that Mailata has put towards the position, and Stoutland as a offensive line coach. So, but even still, I would have to imagine that one of those is going to be an edge rusher. I would think one. I would love for the curse to be broken and take a linebacker as well in the first. We do need somebody to command the troops there. I'm not relying on, like you said, we can't rely on an Alex Singleton or a TJ Edwards type of guy. They're like, there has to be some sort of game changer at the second level, whether they're good in coverage or good in tackling. Somebody needs to be at the command there, with the way Dallas was able to do in picking up Micah Parsons, and then they double that up with getting Jabril Cox. I'm still a little bit salty about that one, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think I would hope that they pick up more defensive players with the first round picks than offensive players. Because yeah, I mean, like I said earlier in the episode here, I feel that the offense needs more depth than it does um, immediate hole pluggers for at the skill positions.
Yeah, and when it comes down to first round picks, I really do agree with you. I think they're going to go edge with one of them, or not edge, but like defensive line because it's Howie. I mean, if Hutchinson or like I know he's not a defensive lineman, but if there's two people they may trade up for, Hutchinson or Hamilton, if they can drop low enough below the 2 or below the 10 spot, they would go up for. But other than that, you're probably sticking at what you got now. So maybe George Karlaftis from Purdue if he falls enough, or maybe a David Ojabo from Michigan. I mean, he's got enough to be taken late first with an or with an edge pick. But those are the only two that really stick out to me that we would potentially go for as of right now. And like you said, linebacker, maybe a Nakobe Dean or a Devin Lloyd. Those are two of the very high ranked linebackers this year. Probably one of three that are going to go this draft in the first round. So why not go there? And with the third one, I'd think either corner or safety because you've got Elam, Booth, and Gardner all around the mid to late first. Maybe even a Daxton Hill. He's performed well this year. Or they could even go safety, but that it depends on where safeties come out and if they decide to, how they view a guy, like maybe a Briscoe, or if Hamilton could fall enough, and if they want to reach a little in in the late first.
Yeah, yeah. It still remains to be seen at this point in time. There's still a lot of work to be done with this. There's still a lot of work to be done with this football team. But all I ask is that another year. We see another year of Jalen Hurts. Find out what he really possesses in terms of a quarterback. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to hurt your team at all if you build around him. And yeah, well, if it ends up not working out, you're going to have the players, like you're going to have the system, you're going to have the players in place that'll put you in a suitable position to upgrade to make an upgrade at quarterback. The players are going to already be there instead of trying to take care of it all at one time. Um, you can get everybody prepared for when you want to make it, where you want to make that next step if it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and here's another thing. Is there anybody that's an upcoming free agent that really catches your eye or kind of stands out on paper that Philly may go, oh, we should at least try to get him?
I think it depends on the position of need when you look at it. Um, I would personally like I would personally like a couple of free agency targets at the tight end position. You know, depending on the situation in Green Bay, you know, you can look at a Robert Tunyon. He's set to become a free agent. You know, OJ Howard from Tampa, David Njoku from the Browns. Um, all young, all young players. You know that can still, you know, that uh, have a lot left to contribute. Really get really solidify that number two spot while you're trying to feature Dallas Goddard right now. Help out in the running game with blocking. Because I mean I don't think Jack Stoll is there quite yet. You know he's got some work to do, but yeah, I mean I think those are some cheap options at tight end. We already know the deal with receiver. We have already gotten some more news with that where it's been rumored that we could also target DJ Chark. You know, I'm not opposed to it, but you know, I think you know I think you're taking a gamble on that one. You know, I'm trying to find out where he is in his injury recovery because I think he had an issue with his foot, and we already know, you know, with anything with the legs and feet, that's not the no, it's not the gamble you always want to take. You know, we just want, you know, we've seen Alshon Jeffrey go through that Liz Frank injury, and he didn't seem to be the same afterwards. So, you know, just like you know, just be careful with what you're going to do there. And well, if you don't think you're going to get it in the draft, you gotta do equally as well. You know, and trying to get free agents to play for this organization. Like you gotta, you know, I think we're in a better position now to advertise a good product in attracting free agents to play for the Eagles, unlike last year. Um, but you know, one of those biggest steps was having stability, and I do think we got that. Um, but you gotta show that you can accomplish having two good draft classes in a row, having a direction, knowing what you're doing, and going out and executing the game plan.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. Tight end's definitely going to be a spot we look for in free agency, and receiver is going to be another one. I mean, someone I've kind of had my eye on is who was it? If I can find it, DJ Chark. Now, yes, he played with Jags and he has had some very up and down, but with what happened last year, that can really be discounted. And I'd like to see him on a team like this because I think he'd bring a good mentality and a little bit of a leadership to this team that we don't really have, and he'd come in as the oldest guy. James Washington's another guy. He's a UFA. He doesn't want to go back to the Steelers, so he's probably 99% likely to be a free agent. He could be
Yep.
another ad. He's young. He's a good player. And if we even wanted to go the veteran route, why not go for maybe a Taji Sharp or maybe a Christian Kirk? Well, he's not really a veteran, but a Christian Kirk could work. Another veteran option really could be
Alan
maybe,
Lazard. Alan
yeah,
Lazard was mentioned as well.
Lazard, yeah, or maybe even Sammy Watkins from the Ravens. he hasn't really found a home since leaving Buffalo. So this could be a place to hunker down, but they also might look for a linebacker prospect in free agency because that's definitely a position of need.
Bobby
So
Wagner's been a big target.
yeah, Bobby Wagner has definitely been a big target, and who else? If I can, Nick Morrow from the Raiders could be a decent guy to pull in. He's got some vet to him. He's had been in a couple of years, so that could be a vet option. I don't know. Vander Esch was only 26. Uh,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I want to touch a guy
yeah, I don't either.
with a previous neck injury, and he fell out of place in Dallas. There, I mean, he was supposed to be one of them guys, and then you know they bring in Jabril Cox and Micah Parsons, kind of hitting the reset button there. Jalen Smith fell out of favor as well. So no, I don't. I don't know that those the Dallas Cowboys signings. The last one didn't favor us that great.
Yeah, and Camo Grugier Hill could come back. He's only 28, and he's been yeah. Even though he's jumped from team to team after Philly, he went to the Dolphins and then went to the Texans. He still can give you some good production, and it'd be nice to see a familiar face come back to Philly. And another guy you could go after would be Ben. I butcher this every time. Nyman, or I can never pronounce it, but he's from Kansas City, and he's been pulling some good playing time. He's been putting up some decent numbers, and he wouldn't be a bad pickup. Maybe even a Jordan Evans from the Bengals. He's been giving some good production recently, but yeah, there's a lot of guys to add that could be added, whether you want to go the veteran leadership route or just go for the youngest guys you can, depending on who gets resigned and who doesn't. And they could make they can make some signings that may lessen the need at linebacker a little bit because any help is welcome. Same with corner. Same with maybe defensive end. So then you can take a little bit of need off, even though you're still probably going to draft defensive the first 3 picks. Maybe open it up to get a tight end in the late day 2, early day 3, or a receiver, or maybe look late in the draft to get a running back to put behind Miles and kind of coexist with Kenny Gainwell. Because Boston Scott hasn't shown me enough development to really warrant anything special. So right now, if I were him, I'd say, yep, my job's on the line, no matter what.
Yeah, no doubt.
I was gonna say, if there was one more topic I don't remember what it was, and I didn't write it down my baseline. I always do this with one thing, but
I mean, there's only so much we can talk about at this
yeah,
point in time.
but I will say this: if Jason Kelsey does decide to retire next year, what do you do with Landon Dickerson?
I'm not moving them.
You're not moving him. You're going center again.
No, I'm not. I'm not moving Landon. I mean, you don't fix what's not broken. Especially with the chemistry that Mailata and Landon built on that left side. They look like they're supposed to be there together, kind of like a young Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks kind of pairing, duo on the opposite side. Even though that Landon has one of the better skill sets of versatility, I don't think I don't necessarily think moving him to center is a good idea. That was part of the whole concept of when they brought in Isaac Sayamalu. And when he comes off of that Achilles injury, um, you know when he comes off that Achilles injury, the center position is not necessarily meant to be as athletic as tackles. You would want some athleticism across the whole line, but being trying to figure out the conditioning of Isaac and where he is after that injury. Um, if he can hunker down at that center spot, I'd still think we'd be okay. But if it ends up not working out, I don't know. I mean, maybe Isaac would have to go to maybe he would have to go to left guard. I'm not sure. But still, I'm not all that worried because I do know that the offensive line has some depth that they can work with.
Yeah, and I think if you keep landing there for that long, you try Isaac at center and then decide, oh, well, you're going back to left guard. I don't think you start him. I think you say, well, here's the deal. You're having an injury problem here and there, and Landon's showing you up. So go in there and fight for that one spot again. And that's going to breed competition that can only push them to higher and higher play. And if it doesn't work out with Isaac at center, you draft a center. You're going to have a lot more to work with to figure out right guard. And then by the time most of that's solved, Lane could potentially go. So it's kind of you work at it, you work on the line as it comes to you, and you kind of find the best way to hit each problem one at a time to make it so you're not dealing with 8 different things at once. Because at the end of the day, that just makes it easier for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and it's Jason Kelsey's definitely going to be missed. I mean, I still feel that he's the best center in football. What he has brought to that O line room in terms of intelligence, um, athleticism, quick wits, um, everything that goes into helping out the quarterback and just like readying the troops, so to speak. If this was the last of Kelsey that we've seen, he's going to be, you know, such a massive loss to this O line. But I don't know. I still feel at the same time that we'll still be okay at the end of the day. Especially when you consider the amount of time that Kelsey has put in with working with the guys in that O line room, um, you know, preparation on game days and any kind of knowledge that he can share through, that he can share through his eyes and experiences that um, whoever is meant to take his place at that center spot, it's not going to be. It's not going to be as hard of a transition as we may think right now.
Yeah, and like you said, that's going to be a big loss. But I think he'll find his way back to this organization somehow, and I think they'll definitely come calling to at least get him on the staff in some way, shape, or fashion. I mean, they did it with Connor Barwin, they did it with Brent Selleck, they did it with Mighty Mouse. I think they're going to have to do it with Jason, and I think that could be to come at the end of a couple guys' careers on this roster if they go, hey, would you be interested in coming back in the front office or wherever in the org? Because Jason Kelsey especially brings a different personality and different vibe that you don't see very much from other guys. And honestly, bringing him back as maybe the next Jeff Stoutland wouldn't be so bad.
No, I don't feel so either. But for the amount of time that time and experience that Dowland has put in, and it's not to say it's not to say Kelsey would have a long way to go, but Kelsey and Stoutland share one quality in that. they're both going to be very difficult to replace, even if you can't fully replace them, which is most likely going to be the case. It's just it's going to be overall such a hard task to to try and carry out.
Yeah, and now as the league kind of transitions and you hear every year about certain coaches on the move, and now you've seen a lot more of promoting from the outside with certain teams, and a lot of teams have started to do that. Stout one day could get that one call and get that one blank check and be off. I mean, it sucks to think about, but anything's possible. I mean, Alabama tried to fish him off. It didn't work, and they called somebody else, but you never know, and it would suck to lose him, but right now we got him, and he's one of the best in the NFL.
I consider him the best, in terms of consistency, the quality of the players that that he's producing at this level, just to just to keep the cupboard full, so to speak. Um, there's really I can't think of anyone else at his level.
Yeah, now that Harry Heinstead, who was who was the online coach for the Bears, who started to really kind of fall into his place. He was a very great talent developer of O line in college. Has now gone back to said college. I definitely do think Stout is the solo number one, too. I mean, there's not really anybody that you think of. I mean, Heinstead was the only one, and he left the NFL. So there's really nobody.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
But anyways, this has been a great stream. One of my first ever live podcasts, and I truly thank you for coming on. It's an honor to share a screen with you again for a stream, and I'm glad I could get you back for one more common flock. And I guess I'm gonna let you go now because kept you for an hour 15, and I'm glad we could get this going because it's been a while, and I'm happy to have done a stream with you.
Yeah, no, of course, Joey. I mean, it was good to reminisce on the concept of common flock at the very beginning, and wanting, and the projected goals on on what was wanted to be accomplished with it. And it's glad to see that it's still successful, even though we're running on separate platforms. So it's almost like a combined success if you think about it. But um, no, we're happy with what we're doing at the end of the day. That's the that's most important. But yeah, appreciate you sending the invite, of course.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to do this again with Jay Fizz just to get the trio back together because
Yeah,
that would be electric. Because I haven't heard from him in a while. It was NFL takes, so we'll
yeah,
have
no, absolutely. Got to get that trio going once more.
yeah, and when all three of us get together, it's always a good time for everybody, and we'll see. We'll see what's to come.
Yes, yep. Especially with his takes and everything.
Yeah.
Quite
But,
the
anyway,
character.
but anyways, that is it. That will end the stream. Thank you to everyone who came in, BPS, BLSG, and anyone else who has watched. Whether it's for a second, a minute, an hour, whatever, it's still welcome. Go check out Lindy if you haven't already. You probably have, but I guess that'll be it. Thank you again, Lindy, for coming on. It's always great, and see you next time.